I would stop the meeting and you Maya's here, everybody. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself. Just give us a minute or two about your life.
Minute about telling my favorite topic, which is me, is very difficult. Okay, obviously I'm from Finland, as you probably know, biggest producer of paper, what I like to see, a lot of handouts here. I've been coaching since 1989. Since 2000 I've been coaching for living, so 14 years. 2005 we opened a bowling training center in Finland, so it's now next month it's 9 years. After 4 years I turned into more international stuff and my wife took over the place, so she's also a professional coach and I play golf. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. You know, the funny thing I learned when I used to do this was some people cringe and they didn't come late to meetings anymore. Some people just love the opportunity to talk about themselves. So, thank you all. Thank you, anyway. We have at World Bowling WTBA, we have a coaching working group, formerly coaching committee, and I believe there's about 7 or 8 members on the committee. 8, but we brought 3 of them into Arlington earlier this week to make some decisions. And they had votes, one from each zone, and they voted on some conclusions on coaching programs that were submitted from our federations, from our zones, and from any private enterprise that chose to submit them. Interestingly, we received no private coaching programs. And my guess is either people didn't pay attention or probably thought, who cares? I'm going to let Juha and Andrew. Maya is one of the members of the subcommittee that was here. As you guys told you, he coaches in Finland, he coaches in Czech and Romania and other places. Yeah. Andrew Frawley. Andrew coaches. Andrew. The better words. Andrew coaches in Kuwait and Australia and other places. And you're a provider too, aren't you, Andrew?
That's right.
He is. So that's not a bad word. And our third person was Jim Porter, who's the chair of the subgroup. Jim had to leave early this morning, unfortunately. But Jim now coaches in Chile. He's coached in many places in the Americas and in Asia.
In Aruba.
In Aruba now. Okay, many places. Viva Aruba. Okay. So without further ado, and when you and Andrew were done, we're going to segue into a few more remarks by me, unfortunately, to talk about the significance of what they're doing and where it's going and why it will affect people like you.
So I think it was January when WTBA approached all the federations on a newsletter to submit their coaching programs for evaluation for a recognition program. Then they sent another one in February, reminding everyone we extended the deadline to submit the programs and so on. Eventually, we actually got only 5 programs submitted, and so obviously it was quite easy to evaluate those 5 programs with few exceptions that I will come later. So a lot of the time on the meetings we were actually thinking that we have to come up with some way of evaluating the programs. At first we like to keep everything very simple. So what we did is we made a list. Can you press enter from there? So we made a list of different components that are important in our everyday work. The knowledge of different aspects that today's bowling coach have to possess. So we came up with the WTBA coaching program guidelines, which means that we have 4 main sport-specific topics and 4 main non-sport-specific topics. Next, what we do is we will send this chart for the rest of the work group members to start. We started adding and putting things into score pieces and so on. But basically, these main 8 main topics are the ones that we are looking when we are in the future evaluating the programs. So every program will get certain amount of points based on each part of this chart. So that was something that we spent probably the most time over there. Then let's go forward. There were, like I said, 5 different programs submitted, and 2 of the programs didn't actually provide us enough information to be evaluated. Because we need to basically see the entire program that they have, or at least if it's not written in English, we need to have the outlines of the program. So 3 of them provided us enough information, and 2 of them didn't provide us enough information, but we are waiting for them to give the additional information, and then we evaluate those programs. So what we came up with there was 3 programs: USBC, Bronze, Silver, and Gold, ETPF level 1, 2, and 3, and Finnish Bowling Federation level 1, 2, and 3, which has funny different names because we changed the entire programs in Finland 10 years ago, and we just named them differently, so the old certificates were still valid, but not that valid anymore. So what we came up with at least this, at the first stage, we came up putting the programs into 2 different levels. The fundamental level, which means that whenever a topic is sort of like introduced, it means that it belongs to the fundamental level. And then again, if the topic is continued and there's more deeper information, then it's called more advanced programs. So we came up with the solution that ETPF Bronze, USBC Bronze, ETPF level 1, and Finnish level 1, all of them belong to the fundamental level. Then again, the further programs, USBC Silver, ETPF level 2, Finnish level 2, as well as USBC Gold, ETPF level 3, and Finnish level 3, they all obviously belong to the more advanced programs. The idea of this is that, okay, there are a lot of countries in WTBA that don't have any coaching programs. I would say that I think worldwide there's probably not more than 20 countries that actually have their own national programs. So the key thing is to how we can give valid education for those countries that don't have their own programs. By the recognition program, the national federations can now ask for these programs that, okay, we need now entry-level program. So they can choose out of these programs to give them the entry-level program. Okay, the bad news for the following programs is that these 3 will put the standards quite high. So the next submitted programs have to be pretty high quality to be evaluated to the same level as these 3 programs. These are all 3 of them are very, very strong programs. So now I'll be speaking, not these standards like this. What? That works.
So when we were sitting in the room, we were just talking about sports specific, and I think we brought it up. I brought it up before when a coach goes to a country and a country is looking for a coach. They want we need somebody who's got some pro shop skills, or we need somebody who's a bowling skills type coach, or we need someone with language teams. What's been happening, I think, in the past, people just talk to someone else saying, "Oh, you're doing such and such," you know. Knows a bit about pro shops or whatever, but I think eventually as we get down the track, when we're talking about coaches, we're talking about people who have specific skills in different areas. And of course, pro shop and someone who knows how to fit somebody, you know, it's not much use, you know, having a person, you know, I went to Q8 and my level of knowledge on fitting was what I taught myself or read in books. I had to go out there and try and learn some more But eventually we worked out we've got to bring someone else in, so we brought in Calderon from Evernight. He taught us what was going on, and he fitted all the guys. So, but if the country is looking for a pro shop guy, then WTBA, and they go to WTBA, they can recommend, they're on the recommended list, and then the country can make a decision from that recommended list who's those type of coaches to go. So I think it's a natural progression to go in that way. And if you look at any of those sports, whether it be football, soccer, tennis, if you go to their international websites, you'll see they have their coaching programs listed, and they have far more, down up to 16. If you looked at tennis, it's incredible how many different categories they have. But we went very simple this first time around. I'm sure it'll change over time, but it's a role of WTBA to go there, and I know that they, in the past, have wanted to work on the programs about, setting up the program. And I think what happened was it was tough for the guys that were in the coaching committee before to actually pick and choose which is the best fits the program, because basically they didn't really have the programs in front of them. Now we actually got to sit down and actually had all those programs in front of us. Been able to translate. We had a translator for Finnish. You leave me the Finnish program, you need a month to go through it. It's pretty thick. For those guys, they love it. They're into that type of thing. But and I'm sure we'll see the other programs, Korea and Germany. They're just going to submit their programs in a lot more detail, so we'll be able to go through those as well and see where they fit into this chart right now. So it's certainly interesting, but it's definitely a role of WTBA, and that's what Kevin's commissioned that to start the ball rolling in that area for countries to look at it. I mean, you only have to see, there's some countries that are going to come up in bowling in the next 20 years, and I know, just talking right now, a country like India is going to have 500 million people, working class, potential bowlers in the next 20 years. How many coaches are going to be required to go there? India's a very well-educated population at that time, so they're going to be wanting people who know exactly what they're talking about. So, yeah, it's a very interesting time.
Okay, so we have one more slide there. So the pending programs that we wait for further information is DPU, meaning Germany, and KBF, means Korea. We need just additional information from their programs, because we need to see the entire program and at least the outlines translated so we can understand what they are speaking. My Korean is not very good. I do speak German a little bit, but Korea is my weak point.
But of course, looking at the Koreans, obviously they've been doing something over the past, and it's a fantastic opportunity for the WTBA and the broader, coaching community to see, what they've been doing for the athletes to actually be at this level. So it's a great opportunity to put something together and get it all together for the WTBA.
And obviously, Korean program will be strong because the requisite to enter level 1 is to be at least 3 years in the national team, in a Korean national team. So that's obviously going to be quite high quality. Okay, we're done.
Okay, we're going to take Q&A, but I think you let me do my little bit, and then everybody up here will be available for your questions or concerns or follow-up. Thank you, Juan, Andrew. I do want to thank both Andrew, Juha, and Jim Porter again for their role in this, and Rod Ross acted as a non-voting moderator, so his 3 days were filled up with making sure that these people from our 3 zones didn't kill each other. I think it worked out. Aaron's a pretty big guy, so he couldn't do some damage and he got mad. This is the significance is that for the first time that WTBA World Bowling has ever recognized any coaching programs around the world. And I think the next logical steps at some point in time are going to be a World Bowling coaching program and perhaps, probably, coach recognition of various coaches around the world by World Bowling. Okay. That's 2 years away, but I think that's the logical step. So, why didn't we get more than 5 programs? Why didn't we get any commercial programs? That's an interesting question. I think people don't understand the potential significance of all this. First, I want to spend a minute, and I promise you, we'll circle around to what I talked about 2 days ago about coaches being able to make a living. I heard discussion in the last couple of days about, what's happening in bowling. We're losing bowlers. We're losing regular bowlers. More bowlers are bowling recreationally and less are bowling regularly. A lot of reasons. I heard it was a lack of cooperation between the bowling industry and managers, and that's historically been true. There's no easy learning system, learning pipeline. If you want to become a better bowler, how do you go about it? Well, I can tell you that in many centers, if you go to the front desk, which is where probably the average Joe would start, the front desk person will look at them like you've got horns on your head. You're asking them more about a lesson. Because most centers, unfortunately, don't have that system. Easy lane conditions, some people blame that for the loss of our bowling population, at least the sport bowling population. Emphasis on recreation, maybe some role. I would tell you, I used to think about those things because I was on the ABC board for 20 years. I think the main reason that bowling and a lot of other sports don't have the regular participation that they had 30 and 40 years ago is the same reason that almost all the sports are crying about when I go to events like Sport Accord. We'll talk about Sport Accord here in a minute, where all the sports recognized by the IOC come together for a week and talk about their issues. That's about 89 sports. And there aren't 9 of those sports that are happier today than they were 30 years ago. What's happened? Well, I think 30 years ago there may have been 30 recognized sports. Now there's 90. 30 years ago there was no internet. 30 years ago there was video games, but they were pretty crude. Our leisure time used to have 4 or 5 competitors. At least when I was growing up, I had 3 sports I could play, and I could watch a fuzzy little TV. Okay. Not the case today. Kids, young people, everywhere have lots and lots of choices for their free time. Young adults have lots and lots of choices, and in most countries they have less time to commit to leisure time. There's heavy competition for our sport today, and that's, in my view, that's the main reason why we don't have nearly as many bowlers as we used to. The same as other sports don't have nearly as many competitors as they used to have. There was a time when tennis, golf, and lots of sports, the projected growth was unbelievable. It's no longer projected to be unbelievable. Now they're all struggling to maintain what they have. Does that mean we've all screwed up? Probably not. I think we're probably, you want to talk about the term screwed up, we may have made some mistakes. Probably did, but that's not the main issue. Competition for time. Will we ever return to the good old days? 10 million, 8 million league bowlers in the U.S.? No way. Because there's just too many other things to do. I think there are some things we can do. I think we lack passion in our sport for many of our participants, for many of our fans. And passion is the thing that drives media, that drives sponsors, that drives the Olympic Games. Let's talk about the Olympic process for a minute. In the 80s and 90s, many of you know that the industry, mostly Brunswick, but to a certain extent, ABC, WIBC, proprietors, spent a lot of money, probably $20, $30 million, a lot of money, into trying to get bowling into the Olympic Games. And the system, at one point, was, shall we say, it was close to corrupt. I won't say it was corrupt, but it was close. And the theory was that you found the right person to bribe or make gifts to. I'll better be careful of my choice, a little concerned. Find the right person to make gifts to, and if you made enough, a large enough gift, you had a good chance of becoming an Olympic sport. And either, if that was true, either we didn't find the right person or we didn't have enough money. So we were close, but never quite in. Process has now changed. I'm not saying that there's not any corruption. I'm not saying there's no politics, but it's a much more open situation. It's an evaluation process. It's transparent. I meet with the IOC sports department twice a year. I can meet with them more if I wanted before flag is on. We sit down and we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of the sport of bowling. Very open conversations. And they told me early on, 4 or 5 years ago when I was first president, we like the sport, nothing wrong with the sport. They don't care about high scores because they know at the World Championship level we can control that. Okay? The World Championships, the Olympics wouldn't be conducted on a house shot. Okay, they get that. But they were concerned about our lack of media, outside media particularly, our lack of sponsorship, and our lack of spectators. And I didn't know what to expect in my first meeting, but when he told me that, okay, that's true, but you're right. And I never thought much about the fact that that's pretty important to the Olympic Games. Not only do they want a sport, they want a sport that attracts media, sponsors, and spectators. Yeah, that makes sense. Because the Olympic Games is a sport and it's a spectacle. So, we've been working on those things more so than the technical aspects of our sport. I can remember congresses, like annual conventions, where we go and there'd be 40 proposals for change and 38 of them would be rule changes. I mean, we just love to micromanage the rules and make very few decisions, unfortunately, about promoting other aspects of our championships. To non-bowlers, frankly, they had to be dull. I talked about this a little bit the other day. Okay, you come in, singles lasted for 2 days, 6 squads. We're lucky to bring in a group of people who aren't bowlers who want to watch. Oh, this is exciting. Let's say we get lucky and they missed an hour and a half early. They come in, there's actually bowling going on. Where's the best bowlers? Well, we don't have to look at the list here. We don't have it posted anywhere. Oh. Are they bowling now? Well, no. We'll know the best bowlers after 2 days. Somebody will win. Well, who do you think are the best bowlers? Well, of course, that's a delicate question. Hard to answer, and even if I gave my opinion, well, Chris Barnes is on lane 28, and Mr. Cho, the Korean's on lane 34, and so forth and so on. By the way, Andrew or you know, made mention of the Koreans, for those of you who don't know, are really, really good. They train like maniacs. You cannot outwork the Koreans. A group of the guys are 22, 24, and 500 revs, and they hit their mark every time, and they're never off balance. Other than that, they're okay. They're really, really good. They can throw your thing and screw everybody else's shot up, and they shoot the same scores they would with react. Interesting group of people. Anyway, go back to what they got. So, bottom line, the process has changed. Now, there's a short list they publish every 4 years. The IOC publishes a short list. Last short list was published in 2011. There were 7 sports on the short list, and we were one of the 4 sports on the last cutout. So we almost made it at that point. And we really hadn't made any impact on our other issues as of yet, because the first time I heard this message was 2010 from the IOC. So we've made some progress, I think, since that time. There's obstacles, there's challenges, and I'd like to see us further ahead than we are, but it is what it is. The next short list will be published next year. The IOC recently came out at their board meetings in Sochi and said, why are the Olympics limited to 27 sports? Why are the Olympics limited to 2 weeks? Why can't they be longer? Why are the Winter Olympics why are they limited to ice and snow sports? Why can't they have indoor sports? And this is a new president making bold statements, and then they went around and got opinions from very key IOC members, and to a person, this is wonderful. We're opening up the process. We have to be more open-minded, etc., etc., etc. So under the old system, short list is developed, one sport is moved from the short list to the Olympics. We're talking about, for us, 2024 is as soon as we can get in under the old system. By the way, some of the people got up and said, why do they have to wait 7 years? And nobody said, because. So there's a fresh, new era at the IOC, and I think it gives sports like bowling and other sports that feel like they're ready, they're close, gives us some level of optimism that we can be in the short list next year. I'll go on record. I'm going to be personally disappointed if we are not on next year's short list. I think the chances are better than not that we will be. Okay, great. What's that mean? It means we got a lot of work to do. Then, The IOC Sports Department, people who work for the IOC, they make the evaluation of sports and they make the recommendation as to who goes on the short list. It's not political. If politics start, you're on the short list. Then you got to start rounding up IOC member votes. That was the old payola days. We have consulted with a company in Lausanne, Switzerland, where the IOC is located for 4 years. We'll go. And TSA Consulting, and they also do work for the IOC. They do work for a lot of big sports. They represent wrestling, and wrestling's getting back into the Olympic Games after being removed for about 6 months. And TSA has convinced me, and TSA has convinced some of our friends in the industry that now is the time for us to make our first real Olympic effort since 2002. And the BPAA, I'm pleased to say, and USBC, Neil, are you in the room somewhere? Yes, thank you, Neil. And Brunswick, and Storm. Hank, are you somewhere in the room? Did Hank leave?
He just left.
Okay. And Kegel, Dell, you're somewhere in the room? Thank you, Dell. And World Bowling, WTBA, have committed about $500,000 for our. And the other good news is WTBA has its own money to do this for the first time in the history of our organization. We were always pretty broke, which doesn't help. So we're going to do things like go to Sport Accord a week and a half in Turkey. We're going to have a booth. Sport Accord is like you've been to Bowl Expo? Like Bowl Expo for 89 sports. It's sports on steroids. It's pretty interesting. IOC, every member, everybody's there. So we'll have a booth. We'll have a couple of world-class athletes in the booth. We'll be selling our sport as a sport for all, as a sport for a lifetime, as a gender equity sport, etc., all the good stuff you've heard from time to time. Well, as luck would have it, this leisure hotel in some little town in Turkey has a 4-lane center. Now go figure. And we've rented it for Wednesday night, and we're going to have a social for people who want to come down and first shots with the world champions. And my consultant promises me that we will have almost certainly have some IOC members and maybe more. So it's a start. We'll do that. We're going to invite IOC media. IOC media are very important. There's a couple of publications that IOC members are all around the world. They're connected through publications. There's 2 publications around the range in SoCal they read religiously. Well, we're going to invite these people to Bowl Expo because our consultant tells me there are not many industries that have something like Expo. And again, I'm in the box, folks. I don't think of stuff like that, but my consultant does. He says, my God, there's 3 or 4 sports, Olympic sports that have that. So we'll invite them to see that. We have a World Men's Championships in Abu Dhabi this December. We're going to invite IOC members and media to come to that. Now that's pressure because they can't come in during the hour and a half of real oil. They can figure what the heck is going on here. And of course, when I say invite, that means we pay all expenses, first class, I'm certain, etc., etc., etc. Okay, that's the deal. We're going to buy some ads in some of these IOC media publications. I know it sounds crass, and again, I'm in the box, but when I was suggested that to me, I thought, oh, yeah, that probably will help, won't it? And we're probably going to open up an office in Lausanne, Switzerland, where 80 of the 89 sports have offices. IOC likes to see you in Lausanne. I'm not moving to Lausanne, but we'll open up an office and maybe have somebody part-time there who can speak a little French. We've already rebranded. I see some of you wearing our shirts today. Thank you very much for promoting World Bowling and our logo. Those aren't quite the right shirts. Terry's wearing this out there. Where are you, Terry? Terry, you want to stand up and just twirl around for us? This is the logo in color. So it's the 5 Olympic colors. So we're going to stop using WTBA. We're going to stop using FIQ. Who knows who they are? Sponsors don't. Media doesn't. World Bowling, okay. I know what that is. And we're going to allow our federations and zones to use the logo under certain restrictions. And Terry, you beat the restrictions, so you're okay. But we're going to become like other sports. We're going to have professional image. We're going to regulate our image. we're going to encourage our members to use the image under certain conditions. And we hopefully will start selling some merchandise and selling a brand that is more interesting to sponsors and media than our previous brand, because it really wasn't very interesting. Clearly from our results, it wasn't very interesting to outside media. So why are the Olympics important? Who cares? I can remember sitting in ABC meetings and we got a board of 110. Oh, the good old days. 110 people on a board of directors. Those of you who come from other countries, that's not, yes, 110, you got that right. And nothing got done. But there was always people who stood up, why are we? I'm trying to say it like I'm 98 years old, because people on the board work like that. I was 36 when I first came on the ABC board. I was the youngest by 10 years on this 110 member board. That gives you a clue as to what was happening. They stand up and say, why are we worried about the Olympics anyway? Well, of course, that was when we still had 5 or 6 million league members. Now we're down to 1.7. Maybe they wouldn't stand up and say that anymore. I don't know. The standard answer is that the Olympics are aspirational and inspirational to young people. You give them a role model. You give them an image. You get them thinking about becoming a passionate member of our sport. But let's talk about even more basic things. I think you said it a little earlier. The numbers are about right. We have 111 10-pin federations, and there's about 20 that function okay. And the other 80, 90, if my math is bad, 91 are just there. Don't have employees, don't have programs, rely on somebody else for everything, and normally that means nothing gets done. They're just there. Have no fun. Those 90 are virtually no fun. Many times for World Championships, it's sad, even in Australia sometimes, the players are asked to spend some of their own money. They travel to the World Championships. Obviously, we have to fix that. That's the wrong message. So what happens if we're an Olympic sport? Well, instead of 20 federations being well-funded, 205 Olympic committees, national Olympic committees in the world will start funding bowling as a real sport. What do I mean by start funding? I mean probably many countries, millions and millions of dollars a year. What does that mean? It means training centers. There's 3 or 4 in the world now, 5. It means 205 training centers eventually. It means capital equipment, Brunswick and AMF. Ought to be happy about that. It means equipment, bowling balls, shoes, bags, etc., etc. That sounds pretty good to me. How does it affect you, you're thinking? Well, first of all, if Brunswick and AMF and Storm and Appetite and so far aren't doing well, that's not good for us. That's not good for you, the U.S. coach, or maybe you're not the U.S. coach. Wherever you're at, that's not good for you. I'm telling you that. If there's no commercial industry, then you're going to have a hard time to affect the coach. So, this is kind of now a segue back to these fine gentlemen that did their work the last several days here. If we become an Olympic sport, even if we get on the short list, I'm telling you what's going to happen. If we're on the short list, we're on it for 2 years before they make a decision. If we're on the short list, you will see interest pick up in media and sponsors. Because people think, okay, if I get in early, it's cheaper. That's a good thing. Short list is important. But if we're in the Olympics now, all these countries that are funded by their national Olympic committees, and the U.S. is an exception. We're one of the very few that isn't. Almost everybody else is. They are not going to hire coaches who aren't approved, recognized by World Bowling. I'm telling you, that's going to be the deal. So, it could happen as soon as 2017 if we're named an Olympic sport in the future. And you want to do some coaching somewhere outside the U.S. or probably even in the U.S., one of the first questions that the National Olympic Committee is going to ask you is, are you recognized by WTBA, by World Bowling? If you're not working for Kuwait, Qatar, and Emirates, and Singapore, and Hong Kong, and Malaysia, and other countries. And why am I mentioning these countries? Because they have money, and they fund the programs. You can make a living in these countries coaching. And you're not getting a job there if we're an Olympic sport, you're not WTBA/World Bowling recognized. And if you're a coaching program, if either your federation's program or a private individual's program hasn't been recognized by World Bowling, it's not going to get used in these 205 countries. So I expect, I think we'll probably go through this process again next year. We'll ask for programs to be submitted, and we'll go through a similar review process. I expect as word filters out, we might get a few more programs next year. We got to be optimistic. Short list, Olympics, okay. That's big time. It's certainly a much better situation we're in right now. And then you need to have we're the governing international federation. That's what the National Olympic Committees look to determine our stamp of approval on expertise. When your sports in the Olympics, participation increases. You've probably heard this, and I've heard people say, yeah, but what about the next year when the Olympics are over? There's some truth to that. There's all sorts of studies, and it usually is between 25 and 45% increase in sports in the Olympics, either in the year leading up to the Olympics or in the year of the Olympics. And if it's in your country, it's higher than that. By the way, it's an interesting aside, everybody. This is just personal opinion based on what I've been told. The USOC, U.S. Olympic Committee, has amended its fences with the IOC on some issues. We used to be kind of the black sheep. And my insider tells me that if the U.S. puts forth a good bid city for 2024, he feels it will be the odds-on favorite. And, you don't know this, I don't think this is public, but okay. I'm told the 3 final bid cities for the U.S. are San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Dallas. Now, here in Arlington, here at DFW, the home of the International Museum and Training Center, how cool would it be? Just think. How cool would it be for the bowling to be in the Olympics first time in 2024 in Dallas, Texas? That'd be interesting. That'd be interesting. So you see increased participation. And historically, it often dropped back to previous levels after the Olympics came and went. You know what happened? Sports, oh, this is great. This is like largesse, a gift. They weren't geared up for the increase. They weren't ready to continue programs to handle the increase, and people left. And for example, I was asked this question by a media guy a month ago. Well, if we're in Olympic sport and 40% more people came to the bowling center, most of them looking for sport participation and for lessons, what would happen? Well, those of us who know the U.S., what would happen? They look at you like you're speaking a foreign language in most places. Because we're not geared up for that. We don't have a pipeline. You can move people into recreation into sport, or right into sport. They see it on TV, they want to do it. Most centers are not equipped to do that. They don't see the value in that. That might change. I hope it does. England, London, the 2012 Olympics. People are saying it's the most successful Olympics ever. One of the things they did is they built organizations that exist today that are designed solely to continue the momentum of sports increase in participation from 2012. And they are very successful. They show up at every sports meeting I go to around the world, and they talk about how pleased the government of England is with the sports that achieved 20, 30, 40% increase haven't dropped because they made it a goal to maintain that momentum and increase. Can we do that as an industry? I don't know. It's one of the issues we have to deal with. Sponsors and media, they'll come on board for an Olympic sport. And, oh yeah, it circles back to your ability to make a living. Sponsors and media, Olympics, it kind of all goes together. That's where the money is. You see, it's funny. We need more passionate bowlers. When I say passionate, I mean somebody who really cares about the sport of bowling. They don't have to average 230 or 190, but they really care about the sport of bowling. And I think that, to me, that's the real concern. Not that we've dropped from 10 million league bowlers to 1.7 in the U.S., and we've dropped other countries as well. My real concern is we have many less people who are passionate about bowling. So if something else comes along, bye. If something else on TV, I'm not watching bowling. Because I'm a casual fan. I'm a casual bowler. When there's a lot of competition for leisure time, what happens to casual fans and bowlers? They go do something else. We need passionate fans and bowlers, and that's what sponsors are looking for. Think soccer. I don't like it. But are the people who like it, do they just kind of like it? No, they're nuts. They love it. And sponsors love soccer because they want to sell the people who are identified with their sport, who are passionate about their sport, because they can determine demographics of those people, what they're going to buy. They're bowling, we got 75 million people that bowl in the U.S. Well, what's their common characteristic? Well, they breathe. Seriously, we're going to sell to these people. We used to set meetings, and I didn't realize how dumb I was at the time. At the ABC, well, we got 10 million people, we got to sell mailing lists to people, blah, blah, blah. The proprietors would say we have 80 million people bowling in centers. That's a great mailing list, really. I thought about that. Now I thought about it. Said, okay, I'm going to go find Bill Gates, and we're going to start the Free Air Society. Everybody who breathes air